No, you go. No, your turn on them.
My Lord, I'm a little concerned about how the sides are being laid out in this discussion. I have some serious worries about proscribing Palestine Action. I have a lot of sympathy with the regret motion. But it's not because I consider Palestine Action to be some idealised, cuddly, heroic campaign for peace. Their destructive, wanton, often violent and nihilistic assaults on factories, air bases and so on, something I have no sympathy with. Indeed, I think they deserve, the acts and the individuals deserve criminal prosecution, punishment. God knows we have enough draconian laws on the statute book to throw the book at them. And as a consequence, what we're challenging here is whether the concept of them being prescribed as a terrorist organisation is appropriate, not whether they are nice, peace-loving, wonderful, Greenham Common-like types. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I actually thought that there was an earlier intervention from the noble Lord Carlisle when he asked whether these couldn't indeed be terrorist acts, and I think that they could well be assessed as acts of terrorism without prescribing a whole organisation. So my reservations are this, that I am worried about criminalising the vocalising of support for this organisation, that even so that if you vocalise support, even for a reprehensible law-breaking protest group, that's one thing, but once they're prescribed, then we're talking about the possibility, at least, of prison sentences of up to 14 years. As all this was brilliantly explained legally by the noble Lord Anderson earlier. You could, even if you say that you support them, end up in prison. And the problem that we have is that it is true that Palestine Action and its cause and its broader support, I mean, we've heard it here tonight, is very popular, and I don't mean that it's populist. I mean, many young people support that outlook. I don't. I spend a lot of my time at the moment going around arguing with those young people about what I consider to be, for example, the growth of casual anti-Semitism, an intense hatred of Israel that seeps into Jew hatred. I talk a lot about that wherever I go, but it's certainly the case that I'm not on the winning side on this one. And if you go into universities, if you go into sixth forms, many support them. And so I'm worried about the consequences of prescribing this organisation, because I do think that it can threaten free speech, but also there's going to be a lot of people who could be, therefore, classified as in breach of it. I do think we should note, by the way, that for the first time since records began, this week the UK is no longer classified as an open country in the global expression rankings, which I think is shameful. Now, in case you think the global expression rankings are some J.D. Vance-like prejudice or something, it's actually a report that comes out annually by Article 19 that noticed that free speech is seriously deteriorating in this country. So I do put that warning out. I do think that we have to be very careful that this prescription will have a chilling effect, or even worse, give some credibility to the idea that Palestine Action are some kind of free speech heroes and martyrs, along with undoubtedly Bobby, what's his name? Bobby... Sounds. No, not Sounds. God, that made me laugh. Bobby Villain is where I was going. What I mean is, these people whose views I have nothing but despise, once you start banning them, suddenly develop some kind of heroic free speech status, my point I'm making. But the final thing is, I am slightly worried as well about making a mockery of the anti-terror laws and even confusing our definition of what constitutes terrorism. The noble Lord Carlisle and others have implied that the definition of terrorism is absolutely clear-cut. We know what it is in the law. I mean, as we've had a wide range of controversies from the government, what Prevent interprets as terrorism or extremism, so on, there's been some confusion. I mean, if it was so black and white, then recent confusions would not have emerged. And my concern here is quite straightforwardly that we might end up relativising what constitutes terrorism if we put something like Palestine Action on the same list as the likes of Hamas, ISIS, Hezbollah. It seems to me that it could create a moral equivalence, and it would unintentionally rather, confirm a prejudice in Western activist circles that the likes of the Houthis and Hamas are just sort of some kind of legitimate resistance group, a little bit like those encampments on university campuses. They sort of, everybody thinks, oh, well, they're just kind of like resisting, we're resisting. And I always make the point that the butchers and rapists of Hamas, the Jew hatred that goes on in those camps, is slightly different than standing around with a flag or going on a demo. If we actually flatter something like Hamas to say that they're just like Palestine Action, then surely that actually undermines the very thing that we're trying to do. So at the very least, I thank the noble Baroness Jones of Mulscombe, because I do not think this is something where you can be so certain of yourself that you think because you're on one side, something should be banned as terrorist, and because you're on another side, something should be not banned. I think it's much more complicated, and we have a responsibility to acknowledge that.